eldest daughter, that's like inherent feminism. It's like you have no choice.
Hello and welcome to Feminism Now. I'm Kim Villanueva, and I'm the new president of the National Organization for Women, and I'm so excited to be bringing you a new season of our show, along with our vice president, Rose Brunache. Every 4 years, NOW elects new leadership, and with that new leadership comes both changes and opportunities. We, of course, wanted to continue the podcast, and we thought we would use this opportunity to talk about where feminism has been in the past and where it is now in this moment. And of course, we want to talk about what feminism is to NOW, to the National Organization for Women. So today, we're reversing the format. NOW's Policy and Advocacy Manager, Shelby Van Hofe, will be speaking to me and Rose, and we'll be talking about feminism and trying to figure out exactly which wave we're on. Next episode, Rose and I will take over the interviews, bringing on the movers and shakers within feminism to talk about everything from reproduction and the rise of natalism to the problem or promise of men. And you'll notice some changes to the format of the show. And one of the things we'd love to do is start playing your messages. You can call now at the number in our show notes and send us a voice message, or email us a voice memo at feminismnow@now.org. Tell us what issues you think feminists should be taking on, or what makes you a feminist, or anything else that's on your mind. And now, let's get started.
Hi, everyone. I am Shelby Van Hofe, and I am the Policy and Advocacy Manager of the National Organization for Women. I am so excited to be here for the start of the new season of the Feminism Now podcast and to introduce you to our new National President and Vice President, Kim Villanueva and Rose Brunache. So first, let's have you guys introduce yourselves. So tell us who you are and what was your first experience with feminism?
I'll go first. I'm Kim Villanueva, president of NOW. Well, first of all, I'm the oldest of 5 daughters. So I think that is an automatic qualification for feminism right there. But I would say that my click moment, you know what Gloria Steinem talks about having a click moment for feminism, was when I was 8. I was in Catholic Sunday school, and I volunteered to be an altar girl. And the Sunday school teacher came back the next week and said, "Nope, you can't do that." And I said, "Well, why? Why can't I be an altar girl?" And she said, "Well, that's just the way it is. Girls don't do that." So after that, I always thought, well, why? That's not the way it should be. So I've always thought, I need to do things to make change so that girls can do more than we thought we could, more than we want to do. And so that was my moment, my introduction to feminism.
Definitely eldest daughter, that's like inherent feminism. It's like
Yes.
You're almost kind of born into it. It's like
Exactly.
You have no choice.
Right.
Rose, how about you?
Well, I'm Rose Brunache. I'm the VP of NOW. And I can't remember a time when I wasn't a feminist. I think because I was Black in a mostly white neighborhood and I dealt with discrimination on account of race. And so I could always see that connection when it came to gender. You know, in particular, I'd say kindergarten. There was this librarian that we had and all the kids hated her. And they said that she was strict and everything like that. But I didn't see how she was any different than the male teachers we had. Now, you don't have a lot of male teachers in elementary school, but we had some. And I just know that she was treated differently. And even back then, I was like, that's not fair. They're just sexist. Maybe I didn't use that word, but I knew that it was because she was a woman. And so I think that was my first moment in terms of gender and sexism.
Awesome. Especially to see it in kindergarten, to see your staff members being treated unfairly. That's absolutely a great start to your feminist career, for sure. So this is a podcast of the National Organization for Women, and we were founded in 1966 as a grassroots organization. Of course, feminism goes back a lot further than that. So let's talk about the history of feminism. So what is the history of feminism and where did it start?
Shelby, if you think about the history of our country, the roots of feminism were actually part of the starting of the Constitution. Mm-hmm. When the founders were writing the Constitution, they left out women. You know, the preamble says all men are created equal. But there was an advocate for women, and that was Abigail Adams, who was married to John Adams. And she said, you need to remember the ladies, because she didn't want men to have absolute power. And she threatened that women would rebel if they weren't included. And of course, the men didn't listen, women weren't included, and we're still working to be part of the Constitution. So feminism really dates back from the early part of our country. And as social movements have evolved, women have stepped up to rise to the challenge. Black women were speaking out against slavery and were a huge part of the abolitionist movement. Iroquois women in Western New York were matriarchal. They could own property, vote out their male leaders, and they had a huge influence on Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Lucretia Mott, who then developed the Declaration of Sentiments. So feminism has evolved over time, with the input of different cultures. The first part of feminism dealt with trying to get women the right to vote. The second part dealt with civil rights. The third part dealt more with bodily autonomy. And the part that we're in now is more about digital media and awareness.
I love that you brought up that quote by Abigail Adams
Yeah.
because it is literally hanging on my wall right now.
And it's still true today.
So you hear a lot about the waves of feminism. First wave, second wave, third wave. So what wave are we on right now? And how is it different than the other waves?
Well, don't you think feminism is really more like a roller coaster than a wave sometimes?
Yeah, I'd say that's
up
true.
and down, up and down. Sometimes you feel like it's going really well and sometimes it's not.
I think people say we're in the fourth wave, apparently, but I think all waves are kind of simultaneous. There's different waves of feminism. There's also different schools of feminism. There isn't this one collective movement.
Right. And everything builds on each other.
Absolutely.
I think that's what part of the intersectional part of feminism, and that's where we are now, is that we know that, women of color has specific issues that need to be addressed. There are economic issues that play into different sectors. And so tying all that together, I think, is where we are right now at the fourth wave.
Absolutely. It's funny because you hear people say all the time, like, oh, I'm not a feminist. I just believe in equality. Or I'm not a feminist. I don't hate men. People are really sensitive about the word feminism. And why do you think people have these ideas about feminism and why it's such a bad thing?
I think there's some people who don't like labels. And I think people don't like to belong to groups. It could be kind of culty, maybe like, oh, I belong to this group. I think some people, it's just like some people don't like talking about politics. But if you listen to them, it's very obvious where they stand politically. I think that's where it comes from. I think also because, like I said, there's many different waves of feminism. And there might be certain feminism that turns them up. I know I do, For example, there's some feminists who are very anti-natalist. I'm not anti-natalist. So I think women should do whatever they want to, but there's some women who aggressively believe that women shouldn't have children. So if you want to have children or if you think that women should do whatever they want to, you might be turned off by that. And so me personally, I'm going to be controversial. It used to bother me when women said they weren't feminists, but now I kind of understand. Some women don't want to be confined to a specific philosophy because there's not one philosophy.
Right. Yeah. It depends on how you define feminism.
Absolutely.
If you think women should be paid the same as men, if you think women should have the right to their own bodies, then you're a feminist.
It's almost also an extension of feminism, whether or not to identify with the word feminism. And maybe that's included in our fourth wave feminism of like tech and intersectionality and labeling and really just kind of giving women the freedom to identify however they want to identify, whether or not they want to use a label or not. But how did the public idea of feminism become so weirdly controversial and politicized? What do you guys think?
Well, some of it, I think, is backlash against people who feel they're threatened. And there's even women who feel threatened by feminism because they feel that they don't have the power or they feel they need to be protected. We just need to empower them and feel that they are the ones that can take the power and feel safe.
And like I said earlier, I think it's because there is different types of feminism. And so there's going to be genuine disagreements. We had disagreements with Now. When Now started taking on the issue of abortion, some more conservative members didn't want to tackle that. They wanted to focus more on less controversial issues like the pay gap. And they kind of left and they created their own organization. You're never going to agree 100% with any particular movement. I think that's, and me personally, I think that I always say, look, forget about what we disagree with. Let's focus on what we agree with and focus on that. And I think a lot of times women, we fight over the disagreements, but you're bound to find areas where you do agree.
So true. Patriarchy loves to pit us against each other.
That's right.
But if we all, just like Rosette, if we all just kind of come together and find common ground, we can overcome patriarchy's bad press, their bad media. What do you say to people who don't think that they're feminists or who say that they aren't feminists?
My personal thing that I do is to not focus on words
Mhm.
and to focus on particular things they believe in.
Mhm.
So they might support reproductive rights. They might support ending the pay gap. They might support getting more women in politics and just focus on actual tangible things. One criticism, when I kept trying to get people, because I used to be a chapter leader in the DC chapter, is people want to do actions. And how do you attract people? Some of the complaints was that some people, women, not just now, but some groups just sit around and talk about things and that people want to do things. So focus on volunteering for women's causes and don't get bogged down in the label.
Mm.
Because they'll find their way too. I think eventually when they get involved, they'll say, you know what, maybe I am a feminist, But I don't think it makes any point to keep debating people on a label and how they identify themselves, because it is part of like larger identity for some people.
Well, and if you can use specific examples too, might say, don't you think that your sister should be paid the same as a man gets paid for that job? Or
Mhm.
shouldn't your mom have access to childcare? Wouldn't that help her out? I mean, if you just, bring it down to the local level or to the personal level, then they can say, well, yeah, I actually agree with that.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that.
You're a feminist.
Well, I hope so. Otherwise, I don't work in the right place. We also talked we talked a lot about waves and how the ideas of feminism change. So does feminism really change? Or is it like we said that we're just kind of like moving forward and the waves are cycling upon each other? What do we think about that?
Well, I mean, I think we're unfortunately are fighting the same issues,
Yeah.
especially abortion, because of Roe v. Wade was overturned. So we're now having to do the same things. I think unfortunately we're fighting for the same issues. I think maybe the tactics are different. Socially, we've changed a lot, but I think maybe on paper, we haven't passed a lot of the things that we need to pass. But, you have more women in college than men now. You have more women in law school. I think women have advanced a lot, particularly on an interpersonal level. But I think maybe, like, for example, the ERA has been passed, but it hasn't been recognized. That's something we're talking about 50 years ago. So we're still talking about it. So I think some things are the same, some things aren't.
Well, and I think the idea of feminism has expanded to include more people than just white women. Won the right to vote in 1920, it technically included Black women, but the reality, they weren't included. So we still had to fight to make sure that women of color were included. So I think as feminism rolls on and waves, it's expanding its outreach. And we're realizing that, there's so many issues that affect so many people.
It's reminding me of Chutes and Ladders. The game we used to play when we were back in grade school. It really does, because even though sometimes you can really still keep climbing the levels, like we're becoming more intersectional, we're broadening things out, women are achieving more. But just like you said, Rose, like with the Dobbs decision and everything, it really does feel like just right now
tumbling back down
to right where we started again. It's frustrating for sure. So let's take a quick break to hear from our chapters.
This is Kim, and welcome to our chapter segment. NOW is a grassroots organization, and that means our chapters make us who we are. So we wanted to highlight a different chapter and their work each episode, so you can hear about all the wonderful feminists making a difference. Take it away.
My name is Christine Lindner, and I am the president of West Kentucky Now. I am most proud that our chapter is an intergenerational chapter. We have amazing elders in our chapter, as well as younger members of our chapter, including a recently formed Campus Action Network at our local college, Murray State University. And so it's really great to have that intergenerational conversations and work building together, drawing upon our different strengths. I'm also really proud that we are a part of a regional coalition of different like-minded groups where we can kind of work together to not just have one group working on everything, but kind of share the resources, share the work, and work collaboratively. The issues that are most important to my chapter are bodily autonomy. We've had a lot of restrictions on reproductive health care, which have impacted our lives in all capacities. We're also interested and impacted by economic justice. A lot of the budget cuts has significantly impacted our livelihoods. Many of our members have had jobs that are a little bit more precarious right now, but we're also seeing the great economic impact of budget cuts on our communities. And we're also impacted by the restrictions on political engagement, the fear of speaking out, the fear of just making a choice, and the impact that could have on your job, on your livelihood. In 2026, we are tackling the cost of being a woman by continuing to provide free resources to our community. A couple of years ago, we started an initiative to pad the pantries, which is to provide free period products to our mutual aid boxes, our blessing boxes in the area. So we have recently revived that. So that's a big campaign that we will be doing. We also provide sexual health resources at all of our tabling events. And so giving those out to our community members, which is really important, particularly with the restrictions in reproductive health in our area. And we're also going to be continuing to advocate for the removal of pink taxes, which are taxes on period products, diapers, other products that disproportionately impact women and people who are the purchasers of these products, as they're taxed as luxuries rather than the essential goods that they are. People can find more about us at our website, which is westkentuckynow.org, or on Facebook and Instagram, or at West Kentucky Now.
Okay, we are back. Talking about kind of the ways that feminism changed, let's go back to the beginning of NOW. So NOW was founded in 1966. What role or gap was it looking to fill in feminism?
Well, I always like to say that this is the story of NOW. 28 women met in a room in a conference for women, but dominated by men. Women got mad, mad as hell, and they wouldn't take anymore. So they started a new group called NOW. So, I mean, they were trying to address the issues that mainly were economic issues at that time. That they felt that were just being, lip service were only being paid to these issues. And they wanted, real results to show. So they felt they needed to do things in their own way.
A lot of it was because there was, I think, 1963, Kennedy signed something about pay equality. And that's what the huge focus was in the early years. But I mean, I think Betty Friedan said that it was going to be the NAACP for women. So it wasn't just going to focus on one issue. It was about a group that would advocate for women in general on all levels. And so that's what we still are. And that's what makes us unique. There are other women's groups that focus just on reproductive rights, just on the pay equality, just on domestic violence. We focus on everything, and we're chapter based. And so I think we're still the same, but better.
I definitely agree with that. I think that NOW started kind of because we wanted to hear our voices, not just men's voices on our issues, and being a grassroots organization and even expanding to as much as we have today, we really still have kept true to that and centered the voices of our members and our chapters and given them space to be able to feel like they're heard. And I'm definitely proud to be a part of that legacy. So as a grassroots organization, speaking of grassroots, what role do the grassroots play in shaping feminism as a movement? So what do we stand for as grassroots?
Well, that means that every member's voice is important. And local issues are very important. And that's really where the action is taking place.
Yeah.
You may feel, when you look at your phone or you watch TV, I'm just so depressed by seeing what's happening to the national level. But you can make a difference locally. And so that's why it's important for each of our members and our chapters to feel that they can work together and find other people who think like you do to take action locally.
And I like to say that the worst ideas are started locally too, and that's what that. So that's why you have to get it at the local level. One thing about Roe v. Wade being overturned is that ironically it led to some states codifying abortion. Maryland, I think, passed it just like a year after. I can't remember what Midwestern state. So, local actually matters. It really does.
And talking about Roe being overturned, it's just it gets me in the heart every time. It's definitely a tough time to be a feminist. I think you guys are probably going to talk about that a lot this season. But we've lost Roe v. Wade with Dobbs, and now there are attacks on voting rights and attacks on the LGBTQIA populations, people of color, immigrants, and these are all feminist issues. So what gives us hope right now as feminists?
Well, for me, hearing what's happening locally gives me hope because people are doing what they can, when they can, how they can. And it's making a difference locally. I even heard from a Girl Scout troop that they were creating outdoor spaces so that the students could go outside during school time. I mean, even small things like that, just opening up people to new experiences. And the fact that the girls were doing this instead of the boys, I think was really important. They were taking the lead.
For sure.
I think what motivates me is just that things used to be worse. You look at this country, you look at how bad things were, and people didn't stop pushing for it. You know, it took a long time to get the women's right to vote. And I like to read the stories about that. They didn't stop. They kept going. And once they got the women's right to vote, they said, okay, let's, you know, the League of Women Voters came out of that, right? After women got, so it was an ongoing thing. You know, the minute that women got the right to vote, Alice Paul focused on the Equal Rights Amendment. So it's like, just keep going and don't be discouraged.
Absolutely. And so finally, what do Feminism Now listeners have to look forward to this season?
Well, we're going to change it up a little. We're going to have some different topics, such as natalism and men and misogyny. Talk quite a bit more about intersectionality. And we're going to feature some of our young feminists who are actually on the ground taking action. And we're also going to talk about violence against women.
Yeah, I like to say we like to have themes for it. I think the theme would be new voices, different voices, and everything is feminism. So things that you might not think are particularly feminist issues, we'll talk about it. And it is a feminist issue.
I love that. Everything is feminism. It's so true.
I think that's a new button.
Yeah, I know, right? Totally a new button. A new sticker. Gosh, we love stickers here at Now. They go like hotcakes at the rallies. Kim and Rose, thank you so much. I definitely think we all needed a little bit of a Feminism 101. And I can't wait to see what you guys have planned.
It was a pleasure.
Thank you, Shelby.
Hi, everyone. It's Shelby again. And this is what's going to be called our grab bag segment. It might be a message from our president, a reaction to recent newsworthy events, or letting you know about something that Now is planning. And today, I'm here to tell you that we are relaunching our book club, Feminist Public Square. Women reading books together is fundamentally feminist, and the books that we will be reading will be aligned with our 6 core values and our upcoming 60th anniversary campaign. Our first book is Mutual Aid by Dean Spade, and we'd love to have you read it with us. You can come and find out more about book club at now.org/National Organization for Women Book Club, or you can find the link in our show notes.
Thank you so much for joining us for the beginning of our 5th podcast season as Rose and I take the helm. We hope you enjoyed a little primer on what feminism was and what feminism is. We'd love for you and everyone you know to join us this season. Share the show with your friends, whether they identify as feminist or not. Who knows? They might by the time we're done. And remember, we want to hear from you. Send us your thoughts about feminism, about what's happening now, about what you want to see. Get our number from the show notes, give us a call, and send us a message. Or email us a voice memo at feminismnow@now.org. Tell us what issues you think feminists should be working on, or what makes you a feminist, or anything else that's on your mind. Together, we can make a difference. Thanks for listening, and stay tuned for our next episode in 2 weeks.
Topica.